how are we going to define woke? And I came up with the quintessential definition of woke, okay? So it's a denial of rationalization. It's an abdication of empiricism. It's hysteria being passed off as virtue. And it's perpetual emotional hallucinations.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show. Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on The Brian Nichols Show, and thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by our friends over at AMP America. Make sure you head over to ampamerica.com if you're looking for all the news you need to know without the corporate media bias or fluff. Also, the Brian Nichols Show is powered by our phenomenal studio sponsor, Cardio Miracle. Now, folks, if you want to hear about the best heart health supplement in the world that's going to help lower your blood pressure, improve those restless nights of sleeping, plus help improve that pump at the gym, stick around. We're going to talk about Cardio Miracle later in the episode. But for today's conversation, we got a good buddy returning to the show, and we're talking about woke. We've heard this a lot. You know, you hear the lady get on TV, she's being interviewed, and they go, well, what do you say woke actually means? And then you get the deer in the headlights look, and then they use that as an example of why the folks who are arguing against wokeism, they don't even know what the heck they're talking about. So I said, you know what we got to do? We got to put some words into definitions. We got to make sure that we not just talk about stuff, but we know what we're talking about. So to help do that today, joining me on Woke Watch, returning to the show, good friend Joe Gulesserian. Welcome back to the Brian Nichols Show. How you doing?
Nice to see you, Brian. How are you doing? Good afternoon.
Good to have you on, Joe. I'm scared to have this conversation. I know you and I have been prepping for this new little mini series we're kicking off here, Woke Watch, and we're worried. Are we going to get taken away here by the big woke corporations? Are they going to come down and I guess bring the hammer down on us, Joe? Fingers crossed, it's not the case.
Well, first of all, it's quite possible the corporations themselves. It's part of a scam, okay, and we can go through all the components, but if you like, I sat back and I said, how are we going to define woke? And I came up with the quintessential definition of woke, okay? So it's a denial of rationalization. It's an abdication of empiricism. It's hysteria being passed off as virtue. And it's perpetual emotional hallucination. So if someone says—
point by point of those, break them down for us.
Well, yeah. So, for example, it's a denial of rationalization where your emotions overtake anything you have to do with rationalization. I would say that they've thrown linear thinking right under the bus, and you can become anything you want to be. You know, I could be Bugs Bunny and so on and so forth. The second one is an abdication of empiricism. And empiricism is like when you have complete evidence, you have hard reason and knowledge, and that's what empiricism is. It's used in social work. It's used specifically in science and so on and so forth, and mathematics. So you need to base it on empiricism. And the other one is hysteria being passed off as virtue. So let me understand something. I'm more upset than you are, Brian. Therefore, I'm right. So I screamed louder. I'm right. There's no argument because I can I'm on the soapbox. I screamed as loud as you can. I jumped up and down, and therefore I'm right. And
well, Joe, by the way, this is the silence is violence mentality, right? Which means what's the opposite of silence and violence? Say something, say anything. So what we saw, and especially you go back to 2020 when the woke insanity really kicked off, right? It was, you got to change your Facebook photo to a black square now, right? Because that's the way you show you're on board with BLM. And if you don't, the silence is violence, right? And that has been the argument. And I guess this speaks to the wokeism. Just I'm standing up, I'm screaming and hollering the loudest I can. Therefore, I must be right.
Exactly. Exactly. And I went to a wedding a few years ago, and this fella, he says, you can be anything you want to be. And, I'm from Canada. And I go,
can you be a cat?
Well, no. He goes, you can be head scientist for NASA. I go, do you think you could play the game like Gretzky? Do you think you could pass like Joe Namath? Oh, yeah, I'm sure I can do it. But, talk's word salad. So we gave you a little bit of a definition.
Well, really quick, Joe, how insane is that, right? Like, of a mentality. I'm 6'5", about 269. I'm a big boy, right? I go to the gym. I lift heavy weights. Now, if I were to go to, a 5'2", 110 soaking wet female, they're not going to be able to stand a chance to do what I do in the gym, trying to lift literally over 3 times their body weight. So just the idea that, you can do anything you set your mind to is just, at its core, just, pardon the expression, it's bullshit, though.
It's true. And so rationalization need not apply. Remember, reason is what's the right word? It's heresy. That's what it is. Reason is heresy. And that's the woke world. These are, wokeism is not as new as we think. These were the, pardon my language, these were the saps who fell for the Bolshevik Revolution. And later, when their purpose was finished, they got whacked by Lenin as well. You got to remember, I think I might have mentioned on your show, that the Tsar's family, the women in the Tsar's family, they were going for this, they wore red armbands in support of the Bolsheviks. And as you might know, if you know your Russian history, early Soviet history, they all got killed by Lenin and company. So then, And so I mentioned that because I closely correlated. But, if you allow me, I'll take woke to another avenue, and let's talk about its financial implications. I'm not going to go into its moral implications. So I'm going to ask you if you believe in equity, inclusion, and diversity. Fine, that's good. At the same time, if I'm not hiring on merit in my engineering team at Boeing, if I'm not hiring on merit, may it be even in Silicon Valley, which they do, they have to hire on merit, and I'm hiring people that don't understand the mathematics behind algorithms, so on and so forth.
Is that bad?
Well, I'm going to tell you, you really loaded this one. You're good at loading me up here. I'm telling you. Well, at least you listen to me. But no, in all seriousness, though, what happens is, how do I reduce my productivity that way, my efficiencies that way? And I'll go to a deeper step. If you hired not based on merit, what does that do to America's competitive architecture? And how does that diminish the competition of America on the world global stage? Stop complaining about China. Just get more efficient. Stop complaining. Stop the trade wars. You're not as efficient as they are. They are making the lowest cost, and this is fact, by BYD, a $10,000 US car entry level. The next one's about $24,000 US. And instead of, saying, what, we need to produce, high quality technicians, the best in robotics, the creme de la creme, the best in engineering, the best in clean manufacturing systems, we're turning around and slapping 25% and 100%. It might go to 100% tariffs, I believe, on EV cars to keep them out of our markets.
Hey folks, I want to take a moment to talk about something that has truly changed my life, and that is Cardio Miracle, our incredible studio sponsor. Now, I'll be honest, when I first heard about Cardio Miracle and their claims about improving heart health, I was skeptical. But after using it for just about 2 months, I was absolutely blown away by the results. First, my blood pressure went from being consistently around 140/90 to a much more healthier and manageable 120/80. And my resting heart rate dropped from the low 70s to the high 50s. And I couldn't believe it. But the benefits didn't stop there. I started sleeping better, and I felt more energized at the gym, and my heart felt the best it's felt in years. And it's not just me. Hundreds of you, our amazing listeners, have reached out to share your own incredible experiences with Cardio Miracle. So, what is Cardio Miracle? And how does it work? It's a carefully crafted supplement that harnesses the power of nitric oxide to support optimal heart function. So by increasing nitric oxide levels in your blood, Cardio Miracle helps relax your blood vessels, improve circulation, and it protects your heart from damage. It's like giving your heart the support it needs to function at its best. And here's the best part. We've got an exclusive offer just for you, our loyal listeners here at the Brian Nichols Show. When you head over to cardiomiracle.com and use code TBNS at checkout, you'll get an extra 15% discount on your order. Plus, with their 100% money-back guarantee, you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So, if you're ready to take control of your heart health and experience the life-changing benefits of Cardio Miracle for yourself, just click the link in the show notes or video description. Trust me, your heart will thank you. And don't wait another day to prioritize your health. Join the tens of thousands of folks who have already discovered the Cardio Miracle difference. Head to cardiomiracle.com now and use code TBNS for 15% off your order. Your journey to a happier and healthier heart starts today. And now, let's get back to the show. Well, what does that mean, though? Does that mean it's going to be more expensive for the end consumer, Joe?
Correct.
Oh.
And I'm going to tie this in because it's such a deep subject, because as you know, I might you might not know this, but I'm doing my PhD on wokeism now, and I've decided
what university are you getting that degree in, Joe?
Well, it's called. I went to the University of Sesame Street, and
with Elmo and Grover and all my friends, right?
Yeah. Sesame Street's good. So
the urge to do an Elmo impression about wokeism definitely jumped in right there. And I had self-control. So
yeah, well, I'll let you do that part there. I don't know if I do so well, but I could try my best. But that's where we're at. So I'm gonna. You loaded me up on the EV. Drop the tariffs. Let the free markets take over whatever's left of them. In my book, I said in the U.S. after Harding. And especially after Hoover, during Hoover and Roosevelt, that was the end of the U.S. free markets as we know them. But ask yourself, if you are paying more for less as a consumer, especially in this inflationary environment, you are now, this wokeism, and specifically equity, inclusion, and diversity, is contributing towards inflation because you are diminishing your productivity. And I'm going to be very frank. I said it this afternoon when I was out with one of my friends. Even I have friends, right? But now and then, people feel sorry for me. They talk to me, and what's going to happen here is overseas, these companies, they mean business, and that's what's really happening here. Yeah.
Well, Joe, let's dig into that point you just raised. DEI is actually causing inflation. Now, most folks, you instantly, so first of all, what's inflation? Inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods, right? But more often people just instantly attach inflation to some economic policy, right? Oh, the Fed printed too much money. Oh, we spent too much money. Oh, it just go through. We gave out too much money. We printed $8 trillion in a day and a half, it felt like. So that's usually the mentality people have when they look at inflation. But to your point, DEI actually is causing inflation. So help people connect those dots from, I think inflation is economic, where it seeps into other areas that you traditionally wouldn't think of.
Right. I agree with all the money printing, the monetary points that you made. I agree with that completely, Brian. But in addition to that, we'll keep it very, very simple because I used to work in plants, right? I've done that in my other life, and I still am around plants. So you've got your assembly lines. Your competition is producing 1,000. You're producing 400 because you're virtuous. That is going to eventually, all those cost factors are higher. It's your unit cost per output. And my accounting side is coming up. Your variable costs are going to be higher per output. You're going to spread that to the consumer. And so this will, of course, contribute towards inflation, and the concept of paying more for less will continue. And that will contract the economy. I'll just say one more thing here. These trade wars, you got to remember, some of these people, it doesn't matter what candidate, I'm not going to go there. I put a 25% duty. Now they're talking 100% on EVs. what they do is, generally speaking, they create distortions in the economy. And like you said, it gets passed off to the consumer. And you're basically telling your domestic firms and companies, it's okay to be mediocre. Keep hiring like this. And that's what exactly happened. Just ask yourself the question. If we had stopped the Japanese in the late 1960s, Datsun, which is before Nissan, Honda, and of course we know Toyota, if we said no Japanese cars by 1969, 70, in the 1970s, especially after 73, 74, the OPEC crisis, American cars were unreliable. They were boats, and they caught us flat-footed because the Japanese had low-cost, efficient cars, just like China has today. And I want to tell you, and I don't want to get off base, China is now the largest exporter of cars in the world. They just overtook Japan. And they have the supply chains, they have the know-how, and they don't hire based on wokeism. They hire on merit, right? You got to hire on merit. When it starts costing money, that's what you do. And even BlackRock got kind of slapped back a little bit. They've got still a fund, an ESG fund. I have it here somewhere. There's so many stocks to keep track of. Your viewers can listen to ESGU. And this is the one where, it's environmental, social, and governance. That's what they're really after here. And guess who they own? Microsoft, Google, the whole works. They're all fixing up the world. Just let's get rid of the carbon. It's all part of the woke agenda. And once we get rid of the carbon, the temperature is fine. And how do we measure heating of the earth? Well, that's very debatable. So I saw one professor, a U.S. professor, he was very, very good. He turned around and he goes, well, what temperature do you want me to dial the thermostat to? It's all part of the narrative. And now that we're on that subject of EV cars, I'm not against EV cars. They have their place in the equation of transport. But, the nickel, the cobalt, the lithium, if you've seen those mines in Africa, perhaps we should take those who have never been to those mines or have never been to Africa, and maybe they can do some virtue signaling there. There's children working in those mines. It's a form, and it's a sense of economic abuse of kids.
Joe, talk to us about, because this is where I think a lot of the policy questions start to jump in, is like, well, don't corporations, don't businesses have different responsibilities, right? Like they're not necessarily focusing entirely on just promoting good services. They also have to focus on that bottom line, right? So shareholders, stockholders, whatever the terminology is of the day, how much does that play into the policies that are made from these large corporations? And frankly, do you see situations where the policy actually goes against the intended goal? Well,
you ask these complicated questions. I've got to think here. Let me take a breath. Okay, so the question is which goal are we defining? The government's role or business's goal?
Let's say the business's role, right? Because if you're a business, your goal and your role in this case should be to create either the best goods, the best services, whatever it may be, for your customer, and thus in turn create the value, which is then passed on to the shareholders, to the stockholders, versus what we've seen, right? And as you mentioned today, DEI taking over, even though it's sounding like a do-good policy, and this could be both from government trying to institute this or companies just doing this because they think it's the right thing to do, and actually going against the intended goal of the company itself, which is, again, to create good, valuable products that solve your consumers' problems. And then in turn, you can pass the revenue, or rather the profits, to those stakeholders and shareholders. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. And the large corporations are doing this. Your small business is just naturally, if you hire the best, I'm going to be honest with you. If you're hiring and you are hiring based on a prejudice, you are hurting your business. So any reasonable business person understands that. But the large corporations are echoing the political narrative of government, and that's where they're echoing. Why? I'm a donor. Why? I'm going along with government. This is the scary part. Government I'm talking about the larger corporations. I'm talking about Silicon Valley. I'm talking about BlackRock. I'm talking about the whole gang there pretty well, even Boeing, Disney, you know, the ones, they just join with government. And when you join government and when you join businesses together, that's pretty well the clearest definition of fascism. That's what really happens, or totalitarianism. They are not arguing with each other. They are being part of one. And I really think government should get out of the EV business, specifically let the free markets decide. I like EV cars. Again, I've said it before, but it's up to the free markets to decide. Governments have never been more virtuous than people or corporations. And I would argue that governments are the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to morality, at least for the last 5,000-6,000 years of recorded human history. Why would I take any cue from them? You know how I think. Right? I'm trying to think of anything they've succeeded at except failure.
So, Joe, as we're going towards the back end of today's conversation,
no.
I know these episodes go fast, Joe, but believe it or not, we're already 20 minutes in. This goes towards not the corporate side, but let's go to the consumer side, right? And I'll give the context to my question. Mm-hmm. We see so often people in the audience, in society, they see these issues happening, and they rightfully point at issue and say, this is wrong, this is stupid, this is backwards. But they don't know, or frankly can't see, what tools are before them to help enact change. So when we look at these big woke corporations in our woke watch today, mm-hmm. what would be a plan of attack for just an average consumer of these companies? What can we do? Can we do anything, Joe?
Well, the nation's fragmented. So if you just turn around and say, I'm going to boycott it, but the idea is through shareholders themselves of corporations turning around and saying, okay, IBM, your share's worth $200. I believe that based on the amount of inefficiencies due to your virtue signaling, those shares we believe are worth $185, and start putting pressure on Wall Street to turn around and say, you're not hiring based on the meritocracy. And I'll give you an example. That's why the Chinese are exporting cars all over the world. They're hiring a meritocracy. What are you doing, and how much is all this costing? I mean, that's at the core. When you go after their financial statements, when you go after their share prices, remember, my share prices go up, I get my bonuses. That's why I'm there, the principal agent argument. So that's what they can do. You've got to hold them accountable at the share price at that area of what they're going to price their shares on. I can go on about this all day long, but we have to come up with some kind of an equation, and the CFAs, certified financial analysts, do this kind of stuff. The shares are worth too much. I'm sorry. You've got people on the line. You're working in your engineering. You're working in your marketing. They're terrible. And by the way, a lot of these ESG, a lot of these companies that you're talking about, they've got progressives sitting on their boards, and most of them don't even know the industry. And I will later, some other show, I will show you in my industry, which is health and beauty care, how they virtue signal to sit there and sell you a $15 to $16 bottle of shampoo that I could make for $1.10.
Oh, and Joe, half of the stuff that they make isn't even good for you, right? I mean, let's just address that elephant in the room. I see so many folks that go out and they're supporting these big woke corporations, and the stuff they're supporting is literal poison. Like, if you're going out there and you're trying to defend companies like Bud Light, you're defending a company that literally serves you poison. And I'm not just saying that because beer tastes like piss. I'm saying that because alcohol is actually poison. So, like, if you're trying to look at a company and you're like, oh, I'm gonna raise my voice against this company, like, at least make sure that you're paying attention to the garbage they're giving you too. Like, don't go and buy another garbage company that's literal poison.
I think we spoke backstage earlier about Pop-Tarts, right? And they've got their woke symbols on there too. Why would you ever feed your kid that kind of sugar and Pop-Tarts, you know?
Because the government told me it's part of a complete nutritious breakfast, Joe, and I trust the government.
Exactly. And you know me. So anyways, before the show ends, I just want to let you know that, I have a Kabbalatocracy application form, as I think that, I don't know if I ever sent that to you, Brian, the Kabbalatocracy. There's an application.
I signed up.
You signed up. So I think between you and I, we should have maybe a 2 or 3 page application form, a woke application form to join Woke Inc. So I gave you about a succinct definition. We can just have a woke application form. I don't do this to be mean or anything like that. I believe in the concept of human progress, but we have to live in a rational society, and we have to impede the level of, I think my father said this. He says, Joe, eventually the insane are going to become the majority. And that's where we're at right now. Because we've got to ask ourselves, who's running the asylum? So.
Oh, that's the scary part, is that, I use the term idiots very loosely, but it does feel, when we look at our current situation, that the idiots are in fact running the asylum. And that's concerning, because for every one of us out there who look at this and say, this is insane, this is crazy, there are other folks who say we need more of this. We need more DEI. We need more, removing of meritocracy. We need more wokeism, Joe. And that's the part where we need to continue having these conversations. So my call to action to you, Mr. or Mrs. member of the audience, if I am allowed to say that, and it doesn't violate any woke presuppositions. You
offended me by Mr. or Mrs. You can't say that. You offended me.
Sorry. They, them, Joe. I want to just say to you in the audience, if this is a conversation that you got some value from, right? This is a topic I hear, I hear Ben Shapiro. He goes on, he says, these woke corporations, they do this, and this. And then what? We're just going to complain? We need to understand the context, the nuance that is behind how these woke corporations got to where they are, and recognize the very real incentive structures that we play a part in, right, Joe? And I think that's the part I want to just highlight as we wrap things up today. It's not just one of those things where we had to look at the situation and, as I pointed out in the show before, just point and say, bad. It's one of those things now where we can start to do something different. And that starts with us by changing the way we behave, the way we purchase and involve ourselves in this economy. And I think, just a call to action to the members of the audience today would be, stop supporting these big woke corporations. If you can, go support your local mom and pop shops, because as Joe pointed out earlier, not only are they not going to do this woke stuff more often than not, it doesn't make fiscal sense for them to do that, because, they live in the real world where there's real consequences. They don't have hundreds of millions of dollars in fund money that they can just toss at programs and say, I hope this makes us look good. They understand that there are very real black and white dollars and cents that need to be considered when you're going into making a successful company, and especially for those starting out at the ground floor. So that's my final thoughts for today. Joe, what do you got for us on your end?
Well, I think you've kind of said it all. I think succinctly put there, I think I would probably, again, go after these corporations at the level of their share prices. You can do the boycotts, fine. Not everyone's going to do that. But I think also people who listen have to understand the strategy behind this wokeism and all the peripheral things that go around it is this, Brian. They are trying to break down the community and family structure where you listen to government as opposed to your core family and the community. So that's what they're doing. Government has all the solutions for all the problems they cause. So they want the family broken to pieces, and it's outside of the scope of this conversation. And you must get the middle class out of the way so you can implement your tyranny. This is all a game. A lot of these people that are buying into all this virtue signaling are not only going to go bust, a lot of them are just being used. And, they want to believe in something. And this is their new belief, the carbon credits, which we didn't even get into. Maybe next time we'll talk about carbon credits and how they're being sold on the futures and the spots markets. But that's what I would do. They're attacking the family structure and rationalism.
Joe Gulesserian, I love connecting with you, and I'm looking forward to having these woke watch conversations more frequently and frankly, folks, I think this is a conversation that you guys are going to get a lot of value from as well. So if you did for today's episode, please go ahead, give it a share. When you do, tag yours truly on your favorite social media apps, x.com, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, as well as Instagram. You can find me at B Nichols Liberty. Also, you want to get in touch with me, email me, brian@briannicholsshow.com. Joe, where can folks go ahead, reach out to you if they want to continue the conversation? Also, I heard you have some light reading that folks could pick up if they want to check out, to get a practical MBA. What does that look like?
Well, the practicalmba.ca is my website for my book. That's practical.
That's what we call setting you up for a segue there, Joe.
Yeah, there you go. And of course, I've got a channel on YouTube. I put up videos like this one here. I'm very easy to find on LinkedIn. And I have an Instagram as well. If you just look up my name, I'm very easy to find. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide.
Joe, I love these conversations. I'm really looking forward to continuing our breakdown of Woke Watch. And folks, again, if you got some value beyond going ahead and giving it a share, please go ahead and continue the conversation. Yes, we love to hear your thoughts, and you guys make sure you let us know your thoughts. So if you are watching us on your favorite video platform like YouTube, Rumble, wherever it may be, head down below into the comments. Let us know your thoughts. Did we give you a proper definition for woke? Do you disagree? We want to hear about it. Continue that conversation down below. And if you are brand new to the Brian Nichols Show, or you've been listening for a while and you just haven't subscribed yet for whatever reason, well, now's your chance. So hit that subscribe button, hit that little notification bell, and no matter where you're watching us or listening to us, so if you are listening to us, that means you're listening to our podcast version, which is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, literally wherever it is you consume your podcast. But a special shout out to you podcast listeners, because believe it or not, that is one of two places where you can find the entire archives of the Brian Nichols Show in our entirety. But that's literally one of only two places, because, yes, those woke corporations, they were after us, Joe. They nuked the Brian Nichols Show's ability to earn money over on YouTube a while ago. We were deemed harmful, hateful content. No, it was harmful because of our coverage of COVID. And they said we had a few videos on there that we were going to continue to get hit for. So we had to remove some of our content from YouTube. So what did? We kept it all over at our good places like our podcast, also on our website, briannicholsshow.com. So of all 850 plus episodes, that is the only place you can check out all of those videos in episodes in their entirety. So one more time, briannicholsshow.com, and a final plug, and that is to please support the folks who support us, and that is our phenomenal sponsors, the non-woke ones. So for example, we got our good friends over at Cardio Miracle. They're doing amazing work, and if you checked out that ad in the middle of our episode today, please go ahead and give them some love. Use your special discount code for 15% off your order. The Wellness Company, we have our good friends at Ebles CBD and more. So again, just want to give them all a phenomenal shout out. They are helping us keep the lights on and have, frankly, really good conversations here with our good friend Joe Gulesserian. Joe, any final words for the audience before we wrap things up today?
Well, all I can say is I agree with your sponsors with wellness and cardio. And those are my final words, because, after listening to this, some people's blood pressure will go up. So the cardio and the wellness will be excellent. I recommend that they get it. So I pretty well succinctly put it. I mean, there's so much deeper we can go into, but some of the areas that I didn't cover is maybe some other day we'll talk about what do we mean by stakeholder capitalism and who gets rewarded for risk. So again, that's the best way to sum it up for me. We'll take it from there. I really enjoyed myself with you today, Brian, as I always do. Thank you for having me on your show again.
Absolutely, Joe. And yeah, stakeholder capitalism. What is that? I guess that's what we call a setup for our next conversation. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single time we have a conversation digging into Woke Watch with our good friend Joe. So with that being said, Brian Nichols signing off here on The Brian Nichols Show for Joe Gulesserian. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.